Let's please stand if you are able, and I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I would like to now introduce our Board of Directors. I'm Mike Rowley, joined with Cindy Coe, Tasha Woods, Kathy Day, and Madeline DeMaitonon. We're also joined with by our Superintendent, Troy Torno, and our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Jennifer Kuntz, Executive Director, Finance and Operations, Kim Snyder, and our student representatives, Max Steele and Amari Thorns. So thank you guys for joining us. Board, first action item is the consent agenda. We have had the opportunity.
We do have a board recognition segment tonight, and that board recognition is you. It is January is school board the month to honor our school boards across the state. And so we're very grateful at this meeting to have the opportunity to honor you as our volunteer elected officials. It's obviously not a lucrative endeavor for you financially. So, the school boards have very important functions, monitor educational excellence, set goals, hold those of us in the system accountable to those goals, create connections with civic and community organizations, adopt policy that helps us guide our work, and helps us keep up with laws and all the different things that we use policy for. So that's really important. Budget oversight, helping us develop managing budgets, watching that, setting our priorities, being an advocate for schools across the state at the legislative level, at the local level. All of those types of advocacy things are very important. So School Board Recognition Month is a time to acknowledge you for the essential role that you play, that the community appreciates the role that you do, because that you have and that you execute, because it is not always easy. It is time consuming. You're here away from your families to conduct our business. And so we have a couple things to honor you tonight, but we very much, as the Ellensburg School District, we very much appreciate you during School Board Recognition Month and each and every other month as well. But January is our time to do that. So we very much honor and appreciate your work, your effort, and the time that you take to help our school district and help our community. So Les is going to help me get some stuff for you.
Well, thank you very much, Troy. Um, let's see here. Okay, so consent agenda. Board first action on is the consent agenda. We've had an opportunity to review these items individually and seek clarification from the district admin prior to our meeting. I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second. I was louder.
Okay, Madeline has moved that we accept the consent agenda and Kathy seconded. Board, is there any discussion? Okay, I would like to at least point out on our consent agenda tonight, we do have one staff member that is going to be retiring at the end of the school year. Stephanie Ristine is a fourth grade teacher at Mount Stewart. She has about 33 total years of teaching experience, and 27 of those have been here at our district. So thank you, Stephanie, for the many years, and wish you the best in your retirement. So I will call a vote for the consent agenda now. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. All right, board, that takes us to our next item, which is administration.
All right, so I've got my update first. And tonight, really what I want to focus on is just a very preliminary look at some of our CEE data we got. We've done the survey in December. We've got our results back. Our consultant will be in district on February 15th, I believe, to meet with all of our principals, and we'll go begin digging through all the school data. We don't want to be going through it until they can explain some of their methodology and how things are reported, because then we just want to be able to know exactly what we're seeing. So I'm not going to go through all of our district overview stuff tonight, but the things that I know that I can adequately explain, or at least have us take a look at. We'll just kind of point out some of those things to you tonight. We'll continue to look at this throughout the year. So as Leslie gets the PDF pulled up, did we get that in your packet? So you can, okay, because I know it'll be a little bit difficult to see. But we're just going to kind of go through some of this. Once again, we will be doing a deep dive with CE into all of our data. And as a part of our contract, we have a lot of consulting hours with them to help us figure out how to use exactly what it says, interpret it properly, and then help give us some ideas of how to use it. So, but first off, just our general numbers here from our survey. We had 193 staff take the survey, 1,355 students take the survey. The majority of them secondary students. Remember, we went just down to fourth and fifth grade at the elementary. So it was majority of them secondary. We had 621 families. And that actually, for a district our size, well, those numbers are above average for responses. So we were very happy with our the number of responses, because that helps us identify, those areas. The whole purpose is to identify those areas we're doing well. So we keep doing those things and build on those and find those areas where we have some opportunities to make some changes and some growth, and is part of an improvement cycle. So we'll go to the first page. We're not going to cover all of these pages. So the second page, the first page of data. And a lot of times this toolkit, so next year when we do this toolkit will have both years, and there'll be then comparisons throughout the years, so we can see where we're showing growth or if things went the opposite direction. So a lot of this year is, and especially in this toolkit, is sort of comparison stuff, but we don't have, it's just compared within this current survey. We don't have the year-to-year stuff. So one of the things that is always, every district I've ever been in and every year we've ever done a CE survey, really what we're looking at that comes up very consistently, they've been doing this for years, is that I versus they gap data. So our self-perception, particularly within our own staff, versus then what they perceive their colleagues to be. And that's sort of what this page sort of lays out because it's one of the most important pieces of this type of data. So the first question there, when there's a problem in my school, we talk about how to solve it. There was a 65% across the board of our staff percent positive, 23% neutral, and a 12% negative response to that. So they asked 3 questions that sort of get to this thing, which is known at the bottom as the I versus they gap. And there's a willingness to address conflict in the school. You can see the data there, and then staff share a high sense of urgency around the need to improve. So this is our staff rating themselves. And you can see we're all in the high 50s to up to the mid 60% positive. Neutral statements are, from the low 30s to the low 20s. And then you can see that the percent that responded to that negatively. So then that translates into the next section: is your staff ready for change? So openness to new ideas. I welcome new ideas and change. Very common. 86% positive response, very, very low negative response. And then my colleagues welcome new ideas and change. And then that's a 58 response. They eliminate in this the neutrals because they just sit there and then what your negative would be. So there's a difference there. That's a part of that gap. Very common to see it that way. Willingness to change. You ask the same questions. I'm willing to change, to work to change my school for the better. My colleagues are. Then accountability, you have the same question. So then down at the bottom, you have the what is an I versus they gap and why does it matter? And so there's an awful lot of research on this phenomenon. And the more positive the beliefs and perceptions of the staff are about their readiness and willingness to change, the more efficiently change will happen. And then they tell us to look for gaps in the I versus they. Large gaps are a sign of, some distrust with that, or at least not being on the same page. And so we have 2 in red: openness to new ideas, 28.5% gap, and willingness to work at change, 26.3% gap. And those are red because the research says the threshold is about 20% at elementary level and about 25% at secondary level. So we were over those thresholds, and then we're right in the middle with the third one in willingness to be held accountable. None of these results are uncommon. In fact, that's how it's looked at every school I've ever been. That's why we work so hard at building culture, particularly around learning culture and developing all the things that go along with it. Because we have our staff willing, it's overwhelmingly positive. And even though I believe my colleagues is also overwhelmingly positive, that gap we would hope would be there. That's signs of truly healthy organizations all across the board, whatever they are. That I versus they gap is small. So that's something that gives us to work on. Would have been one we would have predicted from the very beginning. Because like I said, I've never been involved in a school or a district that didn't have an I versus they gap of some sort. So that was not new to us, but it also reaffirms those are the types of things we need to continue to work on. We need to keep building that collective efficacy that we're all moving in the same direction, working on the same things. So then on the next page after that, please.
I just have a question.
Sure.
What is the numbers? That's the end count on the end at the
That's
top?
the number of people who took those questions. Yeah. So the number of staff members. So we had 193 staff members take it. Not everybody answered those exact questions. A couple of people left them off for some reason. So this next one is really interesting. This is where we're starting to compare, and this is why this data is so interesting to us. We'll start to compare and find out where we share common beliefs between our staff and our students. And so this is measuring the social supports. Talking about ensuring psychological safety and a sense of belonging in there. And so the staff ones, they have a little code, that's the categories that they ask those questions in. They have slightly different categories for the students, but they're essentially asking the same question. So we have some things to look for. And so blue, anytime we have blue, that's a much higher positive answer. Anytime you get down into the orange or red, those where we had more non-positive, negative answers as it came to it. So when you're looking at certain things, like, how people felt about it, how staff felt about it. So we had, I understand instructional strategies to support a social emotional learning objectives. We had about a 70% positive, but we would have hoped, that was one of those things that when you look at the leading indicators and they measure this against the 9 characteristics of high performing schools, which has been around for a long time. And there's all sorts of normed research to that, that is was sort of a mid-tier response. One of the things that we are finding very interesting is when we get down to the third one, the one that's in that sort of darkish red, which is where we're really need to look at that. I received training on instruction to support social emotional learning. But then we get down to things that we have really, really high positive. One, staff of the school value and respect all students. Students believe the adults in the school generally care about them. The development of students' social emotional learning enhances the learning environment in our classrooms. And so, we've got those wide variety of things where we've got things where our staff rates our district and their school and themselves high. And then there's other areas to work on. So we go to the students kind of asking in the same vein of questions. I feel good about my cultural ethic background. So we had 87% positive, and there's 5 choices on their Likert scale. So there's almost always, most of the time, sometimes, and then rarely or not hardly at all. Kind of, that's not exactly the last one, but that's that type of scale. So if you rank in the most of the time or virtually all the time, those are considered positive responses. So the third one down, or one that we think is really important for belonging, there's at least one adult in this school I can talk to if I have a problem, is up there near 80%. My teachers believe student learning is important, is high. And then we look at some of the ones that we know we can look at this to work on. Adults in the school help me plan and set goals for my future. That's an area of opportunity of growth for us, according to our students. That's what our students are telling us, that we need to work a little bit differently when it comes to that. I enjoy coming to this school, 42%. This is not this is a mix of all the things. No single school has 42% negative responses. So that's why we have to be careful when we get it all out there to look at it. This is a formula that they put together that merges all of the responses. So we did not have 42% of our students or 42% in any school say, I don't like going to this school. This is not a straight calculation of that. But it also tells us that that's something that we need to work on, right? When we go through each one of the school's data, each one of them will have some of these elements and a different percentage, and you see exactly how many responded in each one. But that gives us an opportunity. Okay, so how do we create a better sense of belonging? So kids will indicate that they actually, that they enjoy. And then it also leads us to, because we've been talking about student voice throughout the year, then how do we dig down deeper? Is that relevancy of academics? Is it social? Because it's going to be something different for everybody. So it gives us these jumping off points about how we are rating ourselves. So that's good. And then we get down to what is the gap for your staff versus students for those types of questions. And so they basically pull out a question that's essentially the same, although it's worded different. For staff, students believe the adults in the school generally care about them. So staff perception is 88%. Yes, students in the school, there's at least one adult who knows and cares about me, and that's about 81%. Say that. So their perceptions are relatively close on that. And then they norm it out for us. So those arrows in the bottom right corner, and those are our norms, our responses in Ellensburg relative to the norm process of other schools and districts. They've done that. So staff essentially in that came out about 75% and 68% for students. And that's just slightly below the norms. And we'll see, look at some other charts where in a lot of the things we are right sort of on par with the norming process. But these are things that we will look at for that aspect as we continue to discuss, and we've discussed a lot, how are our students feeling about going to school? And that's really questions we need to make sure that we're asking, because that allows us as adults. When there are gaps, those are where then we need to close them between our staff and figure out what we're doing with our students. When we find areas where we are very close and very similar, then those are things that, and it's positive, we consider those are the things we want to continue to emphasize that we're doing and we're doing well. So it's,
I had a
yes,
question
go
about
ahead.
this slide. So as we look at the survey results and analysis more, are we going to get, they pulled out at the bottom of this slide, one question where the
Yeah.
gap is not very big. Are we going to see across the board?
There is a massive amount of data that goes along with this, and then it will also be in Tableau. So then you can pick and look at the data the way you want to look at it as well. And we will roll all that out once our consultant is here, and you'll have access to all of that.
And then just a comment on the student responses, which, I know are aggregated, but there are two that seem low. They're in some variety of orange, that seem like very foundational things to me that are disturbing. So it's marked as EL. If I want to talk with my teacher or teachers, they are available to me.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. This is where when you look at the individual school data, it doesn't show up as orange. So it's how their methodology, how that puts it together. So it has to be relative to some standard, like, comparison percentage. So that's one of those things that those are all the questions we're like marking off, like, all right, when we learn the methodology, these are the questions, because when you look at the individual schools, there's not that orange.
And then the second one is, I feel safe.
Safe at school. That's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those do rank. When we look at the school data, each individual school, those will be one of the lower, you'll, in the category of questions, there might be 9 different things in that category. Once again, there is not, even close to 50% of the kids that say absolutely not. But it is that, one of those areas that we'll definitely work at, because those are the ones where we have less positive, less of the almost all the time responses. And so those will be good conversations for us to have. What do those mean? Why is that? What is the what are the rationale and the answers behind that? So, and that's the great thing about these. This is a 10,000 foot kind of survey, and then you take your positive responses, you build, then you take a look at those things that you just pointed out, and now we dig in and we go further and dig deeper. But the data it looks worse on this chart because of the way it's aggregated. But when you actually see the percentage of each one of the 5 answers, it's still not one of the highest ranked ones, but it doesn't look quite as alarming. So yes, absolutely. So then the next one we'll take a little bit of look at, because we have some interesting comparisons there. Do staff and student respondents share common beliefs and perceptions for academic press? And so what they mean by that, academic press is a concept that comes out of the powerless to powerful work, which actually was pioneered a lot here in Washington State. Chuck Salinas, one of the ones who wrote the book, is a professor at Gonzaga. When back during the sanction era from No Child Left Behind and Sunnyside got themselves into state control. Essentially, Chuck was the person they sent in to work. So really what this is it's that perceptions and beliefs about performance from both the student perspective, what their belief is about their own ability to perform, and staff, what their belief is about their students' abilities to perform. So these are always things that they look at and find very interesting data. So our staff, once again, we go through, we've got some blue, and we've got some of the ones where our staff didn't rate ourselves as high. So instruction is personalized to meet the needs of each student right up there. So that's basically 55% non-positive. So in the top 2 categories. So we know we have some work to do, and they're rating themselves that we have some work to do on individualizing instruction for students and based upon their learning needs. And then, we have some, rate ourselves pretty high on things on like the third one. Students are provided tasks that require higher level thinking skills. I provide timely feedback to my students about learning towards the bottom. An area that we're always working on, and our staff rated the second from the bottom there, struggling students receive early intervention and remediation to acquire skills. We're always working on those intervention things. We've talked, Jen shared a lot of the work that we've been doing on that. So we're going to, those ones aren't surprising because we know we have work to do there. What it's good is that we were pretty honest about where we were. That's the first step to getting better. And then some of the students, school's doing a good job of preparing for me to succeed in life. Honestly, I have no idea how our fourth and fifth graders, are going to answer that. So that's one of those where when you put everybody together, when you don't know exactly what you're getting with those answers because there's a very different perspective from a high school junior to a fifth grader about what that means. But then when you look at the individual school data, you'll be able to kind of see that one a little bit better. Once again, asking a fifth, sixth grader, I have a plan for what I want to do after high school. I'm sure when my student took it, it was, yeah, I have a plan. I'm going to be a professional football player or something along those lines, right? So that's interesting. But, one of the ones that that at least in that initial look that I went for was the third one down. So I know I will graduate from high school. Obviously, we'd like 100% on that. But having that be a significantly, positive answer, 80%, lets us know that we're talking about it and we're building a little bit of that now. So what do we have to do to get that 100%? What do we have to do to get every kid to believe that? And so, some of the things that we've talked about and that you're interested in for sort of graduate process and things like that should help us get that final 20% in there. Once again, my teacher expects me to do the best, to do my best, 88%. But then we have things that get down to relevancy. My teacher helps me learn by challenging me with interesting activities in class. So what does that mean, right? So how do we do that? And that's a challenge in this day and age for every level because our students, they just don't engage the way that they have in the past that most of us that are older, like myself, did. We've had that discussion with our student reps who have informed us, about the mental health stuff and that kids would, which we're working on getting there. And we talked about it today, but like that kids would interact with an app, and text message in it's a really foreign concept to me. I honestly still can't wrap my head around it, but that's the student voice. That's meeting them where they're at to move them forward. It's, things that we're going to have to do to adjust and adapt to AI because it's out there. It's not going away. We can't keep doing things exactly what we've done. So that's some interesting data. One of the ones that I think down there at the bottom, then when you're looking at that staff student gap for questions, and once again, we need to wait till we get the methodology to really dive into this. But we've got this, we've got two things there that, how our staff sort of rated themselves that are things we need that gives us as a district, things we know we have to work on. So I believe all students can meet state standards, right? That is a thing that they're never going to if we don't believe it. Right. So that's, rising up to expectations. So we need to work on that. And our staff believes it all can. But then the students, we've got a real positive response. My teachers expect all students to succeed no matter who they are. And so when we look at the norming to across the country, so to speak, or, in staff, we're pretty close. The norm would be 74.5%. We're at 73. That positive. Our students were a little bit lower though. Then that was a kind of a more significant drop, 5%, sort of rating themselves lower on some of that common beliefs and perceptions about academic ability. So that probably gives us that rise where we need to help. We need to figure out and be talking with students and helping them understand that they can't do that. And look at that all through subjects. Usually what first comes to mind is we develop that math mindset, right? Unintentionally, but students, Jen was explaining this. We were talking about this in this situation earlier this week. One of the things about math, there's always a right or wrong. And so kids very early on in elementary school, if they get it wrong a few times, well, okay, then they just tell themselves they're not good at math. And that carries through all the way, through the rest of their lives where we need to, that's where that grit and determination and the working on those types of things, is really important. So that was one that was maybe a little surprising. That was probably one of the things where we were furthest from a norm across. Just a couple other pages. So this one I thought was interesting. Let's say if we can skip to the one that says beyond that, the next one, there we go. What are the top and bottom 5 survey items? So this is just like they picked the top 5 highest things we scored on and the top 5 lowest things that we scored ourselves on. And this one has the family data in it in comparison as well. So in our staff survey, our top 5 things that our staff rated themselves the highest on: I'm willing to work at changing my school for the better. I'm willing to be held accountable for student learning. My principal is committed to quality education. I provide timely feedback to students about their learning, and students believe the adults in the school generally care about them. So those were the 5 where our staff across the board ranked ourselves the highest. And then the 5 areas that we have the most opportunity to grow in, our school community engages in difficult conversations about race, gender, oppression, and discrimination. I receive training on instruction to support social emotional learning. Our teachers engage in classroom-based professional development activities, peer coaching, essentially. We talk about race and bigotry as a staff, and peer observation, coaching, and feedback is a tool we use to improve instruction. So what's really interesting to us is too that we had already been talking about, and there had some groundwork was being laid, was our teachers engage in classroom-based professional development and peer observation, coaching, and feedback is a tool we use. We absolutely know that we don't have any systems in place to do that. So schools had been sort of working on things and developing that. The Early Learning Center already has, of course, they have just 3 teachers, but they already have developed a system for peer observation and have started doing it. And most other schools have been working on it in one way or another. And so that's one that we knew we were going to want to work on anyway. And so all that is, this just reinforces that we're all being honest, that we don't have these yet. And that's a very high leverage strategy for school improvement. It's proven time and time again. That's one of the most high leverage strategies you can use. So that gives us the feedback, reinforces the feedback that we thought we were getting, or that we already knew. So student survey was very interesting. So their top 5 things: my teacher believes student learning is important. My teacher expects me to do my best. I understand the expectations of the school. I feel good about my cultural ethnic background, and I am respectful of others at this school. So those are the 5 highest areas that students rank themselves. And then the areas that they ranked the lowest: my teacher tells me the purpose for each lesson or activity. So that's feedback for us, because that's been an emphasis. So we need to keep that and to help take it to another level so we can get that higher, because that's one of the most important prerequisites for them being able to learn what we want them to do, is to understand what it is we want them to learn and how we're going to achieve that. Work I do in the school is useful and interesting to me. I enjoy coming to the school. Our school engages in difficult conversations about race, gender, oppression, and discrimination. Most students are respectful of others at this school. So those are opportunities for growth for us to dive deeper into the student perception of those and understand why, and start to make some plans about how we can improve that. And then our family survey. The top 5 things that our families rated: communication materials I receive from the school are in the language I can understand. School employees are respectful and courteous of one another. Parents, families, and employees at the school talk respectfully with one another. The principal of the school is committed to quality education, and adults in the school value and respect my racial, cultural identity. So those are 5 positive things that came from our families. And so now here we have a connection between our families and our students. My student understands the purpose of each lesson. Was an area for us to work on. Our school engages in difficult conversations about race, gender, oppression, and discrimination. I'm informed about progress towards the improvement goals of this school. Parents, families have input into plans for improving the school, and the school tells me how I can help my student with homework. So those are all very insightful things for us. One of the things that we had already begun talking about is the fact that we do not have in Ellensburg, we do not have a very defined school improvement process, unless a school is submitting things because they're in school improvement, and so they have to submit an OSCE plan to the state and things like that. So we don't have a history of being, at least recently, of having a really well-defined process. So what that's telling us is that, so we know now that family engagement piece, we need to do something different to help get that input about school improvement process and how we do that. And so that our families were telling us that, and then continue to talk to them about the goals of the school. How do we get that information out there? So that gives us some really good feedback to work off of in terms of developing and strengthening our process, and then also understanding the types of things we need to be communicating out across the board in terms of goals. So very interesting pieces for us there to sort of see how they all come together. Are there any questions about that one? I'm going to go like one more here. So Yeah, the next one, Leslie, right there. So this one is interesting because it compares very similar questions and compares across all three surveys. And so if all three surveys are orange or red, that means we had a lot of, didn't rate ourselves very highly in those categories. And if they're all blue, then all three surveys rated themselves very highly. And so you have that data to look at. And then you also have what happens if between you have one blue and two reds or vice, that kind of stuff. So it gives us a lot of very interesting things to look at. So academic equity. So basically, do we place when we place students, is it influenced by race, gender, socioeconomic levels? Blue categories all the way around. Our staff was the highest at 85%. Families came in at 78% rated as positive with that. Behavior standards, which is always challenging things to look at. So the staff and the students rated themselves as not mostly positive in those two categories, but our families in the school has equitable behavior rules for all students. Our families, the parents rated us higher than our staff and students did for that. So that's an interesting thing for us to take a look at. Bullying, staff enforced the bullying harassment policy of the schools. The staff rated ourselves pretty high and blue with 81%, but both students and families were significantly lower in that. So that's another thing where we need to go back to that data. We need to look at it and figure out why that might be and what we can do to get those perceptions in line. Celebrating success. We have a system for celebrating success. Staff and family schools are the family was the school celebrate student success. They were both mostly positive, but our students weren't as positive about our efforts to celebrate success. So there's another good learning piece for us. So if we're feeling happy about success and things like that, we've got to we're missing the students right now. So we've got to find ways to do that, which are always things that we can figure out ways to work on. Confronting bias, we knew that based upon the prior responses we looked at, everybody was in agreement. We can do a much better job at that. And so that's one of those where, like I said, all three of them, although the families were a little bit better in how they rated us for that. High expectations. So another one where we have a couple of blues and a reddish orange color. So our staff believes that all students can meet state standards. We'd seen that data before. That's not a highly ranked belief by our staff of each other. And then, but my teacher finds ways for me to learn things I find difficult, or excuse me, skip down a little. So my teacher expects all students to succeed no matter who they are. The students were 80% positive on that. And then families that teachers have high expectations for student learning were generally positive. So that's one we'll have to dive in with our staff. That's that collective efficacy piece. Educational research tells us teacher collective efficacy is the highest leverage thing we can have. And that's a group of teachers working together, all in that common belief that working together, they can get kids there. So we'll continue to work on that stuff and figure it out. Intervention for struggling students. Interventions are something we have been working at for a while and continue to look at. All three of them in somewhat agreement that's an opportunity of growth for us, an area that we are not operating at peak efficiency. And then so when we get to the safety one, which we had a question about earlier, and this was why I wanted to cover this page, this was really interesting. Staff, students believe the school is a safe place. Fairly high, but right in the middle. That kind of sand color means just sort of right in the middle as they do it. But the students I feel safe at the school was a little bit lower, but then the families had a much higher belief about that. So that's one where we kind of had all three, sort of a low, a high, and a middle there. And so since safety is really important, that'll be obviously significant for us to dive into that as we learn a little bit more about it. And then the supported learning, we had three positive things. Students believe the adults in the school generally care about them. There's at least one adult who knows and cares about me, and this school provides a caring, supportive environment for my students. So this is, like I said, the toolkit. As we get it, you'll have access to all of that. We've got reports for each school. We've got other reports for the district in general, and then we have the Tableau, which allows us to compare different cells and things like that. So we got a lot of really good information, and we really appreciate, that everybody, as many people filled it out as they did. And so really what you do with data You analyze it. What are we doing well? Where are our opportunities for growth? And then we need to, dig down into some of those areas. And one of the themes that did emerge, as the board has been talking about, for a while, and especially after we went to WASDA, was, we really need to reemphasize the student voice in understanding what they're experiencing, what their thoughts are about, how we can improve and meet their needs, because, life's changing pretty quickly. Yeah, they're around them, and we get caught up doing what we're doing. So we need to have that regular feedback loop just to figure out what we can do. So super fast. We had a few questions. What other questions do you have right now? We will obviously bring this back and spend a lot more time with it.
It's not a question.
I'm encouraged that we did this. It's crucial that we received all these three stakeholders' input. I'm encouraged because, as you mentioned, we have a consultant that we already have hours and plans to go through this, and that feedback's important. And you outlined everything that now we're going to do something with it. So that's a great foundational step that the district is in need of. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's first off, you have to come back and know there's going to be orange, right? Like, you're unrealistic if you ask people for feedback and you don't expect to have, in this case, orange, right? So it really is just, it gives us stuff to work on when there's a new strategic plan starts to be developed. There's this data to help facilitate and be a part of that. It then gives us that benchmark. And as we do it, in additional years, then you can chart those areas of growth. So it's really important for us as a district. And honestly, it validates a lot of what we kind of thought, which, areas that we need to work on. There's not, quite honestly, a ton of surprises. And then when you look out later on, when you see it, you'll see in a lot of the categories our norm chart, and we'll kind of go up now. Very few categories are we more than percentage or point or two either above or below the norm. There's a couple areas where we're a little bit of an outlier, but so on the one hand, that's good. That tells us not to overreact. It tells us to look at the orange, deal with it, and start making plans. So that is pretty much all I have. Or if there's any other questions, and we'll move on to our teaching and learning. All right, so teaching and learning tonight will be primarily our secondary principals, Bo from the high school, Michelle from Morgan, to present like our elementary principals did at our study session. And then at the February meeting, because we're not having the study session, at the February meeting, we'll finish it out with the choice schools and the early learning center. With things. So we will have, I don't know who drew the stick to go first. Bo got pointed out. So Bo is going to go first and discuss the high school. It's the same sort of format as we did at the study session. He'll talk for a while, go for, talk about the WIG, talk about 2 or 3 or 4 other highlights that he has, and then answer any questions that you have. And we'll come back later in the year and sort of do a data dive into each school.
Well, thank you for while we're pulling this up. I'll speak for myself, and I know the admin team, the CE survey, that's the first that Michelle and I have seen some of the results. But it is a process that, you could easily shy away from if you're going to see the ones, right? But I think collectively as a group, we were hungry for the data to say, hey, where do we focus energy, time, resources that we need to start with? And as we see some of the things that I'm talking about, there are on the survey. And so it's reassuring, it's kind of like going to the doctor and you see a list of all your, like some things you're sick and you got to do better and other things you're doing well, and you can figure out how to obviously celebrate them more appropriately for the students. But from an administrative perspective, having the data and having a place to start is well, like to lean into and say, hey, there's work to be done. But as you're going to see, some of the things on here are already, some of those things are already identified. Go ahead, Leslie, we'll get going. So high school week or our wildly important goal, we had some fun with Troy on Monday. All the administrators walked in with very.
Wig.
And we appreciate the opportunity to be on the community because it is something that keeps it at the forefront for us. But at the high school, our focus is to ensure that we know our essential standards so that we can build the connected processes that follow the PLC structure. So one of the things that, we've been doing PLCs for a while, but one of the things we realized, especially in the high school, is the why we're doing the PLCs was a component that we struggled to identify. And so one of the pieces for us was that we really needed to find the essential standards that we wanted kids to know. And in order to do that and guarantee a viable curriculum for kids across, teacher A, teacher B, teacher C at the high school level, we really had to narrow down what we really were going to call essential standards. And so that we made that our big at high school. And the focus was, I'm honest, in all honesty, I asked Troy and Jen, where do we start when some teachers have 4 classes in teaching, right? Like essential standards for 4 classes seems like, oh my gosh. So we started with 1 course per department to really get the process down so that we could replicate the process across other courses is where we started out in the year. Lead measures, these are the things that we hope to see up front. Articulating the goals of building leadership team and our PLC guided coalition, which is new this year. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Establishing a reporting and accountability structure with Google folders, bi-weekly meetings to target our work and focus our PLC needs. Essential standard selection, we narrowed it down to 5 per semester. We wanted the high school departments to have in each course 5 essentials first semester and 5 essentials for second semester, so that it wasn't something that we couldn't manage or figure out how we were going to assess and then discuss. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Common formative assessments, question evaluation, like what kind of questions are we using over formative assessment? Is it simple recall or is it more thought-provoking and require more depth knowledge for kids, which is what POK stands for? What does our unit planning look like? And then levels of proficiency. What does that standard look like? And then the increased frequency of use of formative. Formative is a software program that helps teachers write formative assessments, and they can see in real time how kids are answering, right? Green checks, red checks, as kids are taking the assessments. So we want to increase the usage of that so we have more real-time data to use in the process. Lag measures, which are things we'll come later, monitor our usage of formative, monitor smarter balance assessments, interim assessments, and the full one at the end of the year, and then monitor our math. The purpose, as I mentioned a little bit, is guaranteed viable curriculum for all students on the essentials. So the essential standards, the definition we use is things that we think students have to know in order to move on to the next course, or if you're a senior, move on and graduate. Why do we want to do this? Well, this one's the most important part, to increase student learning. One of the things we're really talking about a lot right now in high school is compliance versus learning. Are we wanting students to do it to comply with the assignment, or are we wanting them to do it so that they learn? And then can we articulate that to the students, right? Like, does the student know this is about my learning, not necessarily about I jump through the right hoops, get the right points. And so really having that conversation. What are we seeing? We're seeing increased student learning as measured by standardized assessments. We have some preliminary results from our math scores for the winter, and they're very encouraging. Like kids are doing much better this winter than they did last winter, and even compared to the fall, which is always a good thing. But we have our larger math data that's coming and finished up testing this week. Finals are ending on Friday, and so we're hoping to have a much broader data assessment coming up. The progress that we made, all departments have evidence of essential standards identified. This was kind of like starting over for, I mean, and if you ask a high school staff member, and I'm not going to put Kevin on the spot, but they've done the essential standards for probably 4 or 5 iterations in their career here in the Ellensburg School District. But what we're asking them to do this time is not necessarily what are the standards or unpacking the standards, but identify what are the 5 most important. And as you can imagine, that sparks a pretty lively debate, right? Like if I sat down with Kathy and said, what are the most important English standards? Her, Jen and I would probably all disagree. But at the end of the day, we tasked the teachers to find the 5 most essential in each of their courses. And with a better understanding of why. Like I think we had done the compliance piece as the goals. And we filled out the documents in the past without really knowing why we were doing it. And now, with Troy's leadership and leadership this year, it's a lot clearer to everybody about why we're doing the compliance pieces and why we are filling the things out. Because the goal is to improve the student experience and student learning. How we did that at the high school, with 12 departments, it's a little different than like having a first grade, second grade, third grade, right? So the way we did it is we created Google folders, and the Google folders we created are public to everybody in our building leadership team, which is kind of an interesting thing for some, right? Like, oh man, everybody in this group can see all the work I'm doing. But we felt like it was necessary for transparency that if we're going to talk about it and we spend time on it, let's see what we're all doing. And so we share these folders, and we created something called the PLC Guiding Coalition, which is different than our old school department heads. The model that we had used for my entire time, though, for probably back to when Jen and Kat was the leadership team was the department chairs. Well, we realized that in a lot of cases, those are the right people who are leading the PLC work. But in a lot of cases, they wanted to share that and say, this is something that you're more skilled at leading the discussions, looking at data. And so we realized we needed to have a separate group focusing specifically on what we do with PLCs this year. So we, in every department, we have a PLC lead that is in charge of their folder, their documentation, but also in charge of running the PLCs and maintaining that process. That is new this year. Like that is not something that we had done before. We had been doing PLCs not nearly with the same level of intentionality as we have focused on this year. Challenges, it's really hard to slow down. And what I mean by that is when you're trying to do a process where you identify a standard, assess the standard, intervene on the standard, like the 4 essential PLC questions, it requires that you can't just get on the tracks and go. You have to be able to build a system so there's enough time to say, okay, here's the essential standard, here's the common formative assessment, here's our time to look at the data, and then what do we do when they don't? What do we do when they don't? Is a lot slower of a process than what we have built a system to do, which is chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and keep going. So unlearning some of our previous behaviors is one of the current challenges that we're having to have ongoing discussions about. The other one is tier 2 intervention. What do we do when they don't? And so we have had advisory at Ellensburg High School since a long time. And we've had multiple iterations. It's looked like a lot of different things. And so we really had to look at what are we really doing with our advisory team. Well, one of the challenges we have currently in advisory is we also have, I don't want to use the word, but we put several things in there that are state mandated, like the high school beyond plan, our work with Zello, also our social emotional learning components we have put into advisory. Well, what we're finding is that it's overloading what we're able to do in advisory. And then when you try to use it as a tier 2 intervention, they're conflicted. And as we're going through it, we're looking at like, okay, how do we address that moving forward? So that's one of the challenges we're currently experiencing as well. Celebrations, like I said, we built a guiding coalition, which means dividing time, dividing resources, dividing people. It is a challenge to figure out how you're going to have extra meetings for people that are already super involved. A lot of these folks are the ones that I rely on all the time. Like, hey, can you help me on this committee? Can you help me on this committee? And so finding that time has been really important. In fact, we have another meeting tomorrow. one of the things that's gone really well is the PD sessions in-house. It's a different model this year. So like, for example, last week, we did an in-house PD session around PLC work, and we looked at collective semi-fictitious group of data and said, what do you see? What would you do? What would you change? What are the skills that the teachers presented? What are the skills that the students showed? In a way to kind of prime the conversation around how do we move to the next phase for our kids and our learning and what we see. And increased collaboration. I think a huge success story for us is that we've hired some really good people in the last few years. And as a result, we brought in some really cool things that other people have done. And it's moved our collective collaboration, the needle significantly. And departments, for example, on the science department, where we've had a lot of unique personal situations where people have been gone for a large amount of time, whether it's by accident, like you literally crash or do something silly, or illness or other things. And the ability to collaborate has allowed those departments and those classes and those kids like to share the information, share the materials, and to really function much better than we've had in the past. In the past, if we had a sub for 60 days, it would have been catastrophic. But now, through the collaboration process and the shared information, shared documents, shared planning, we have been able to sustain some of those things and not suffer near the same consequences of student learning. So that's also a huge celebration that can be attributed directly to the collaborative work folks are doing. Thanks. Items that we're still focusing on, these are outside of the PLC, the climate and student experience. So one of the things that you saw on the data, right, like what are students experiencing and what are some of the negatives or red areas that we have seen in the past? Well, we knew this was one at the high school that we hadn't addressed. So some of the things that we did so far around like climate at the high school have been, and we trained all staff on safe spaces, which is a specific training on how to help students feel like it's a safe place. Obviously, there's more work to go, but we did a training for all of our staff members in the fall, which started with sending some of our staff to train-to-trainer events and then come back and train our staff. And the plan is to share that with other staffs in the district as we go. We also partnered with Helen House to help facilitate that. In fact, one of Helen House's staff members came and was a participant and a leader in our process, which was really successful. Another partnership with Helen House is that we brought in was a pizza class, which is a safe place for our LGBTQIA students that meet weekly, and they meet on Thursdays. The partnership includes like there's a pizza for the kids every Thursday. There's a place for them to meet. The attendance started out smaller, but it has grown to the point where we no longer fit in the conference room. The group now is meeting in a little theater because of capacity issues, which is a good thing. Kids are feeling safer and more willing to participate, and the staff involvement is also going up. We knew we needed to continue to do and look at other things besides safe spaces. So we partnered with Central, and we started this last spring. They run a program it's out of one of their equity offices. It's a bystander training for how you help students. We had multiple high school staff members, middle school staff members, even elementary staff members came to the original training. And basically what it is, it's helping students have tools to what to do besides use the app or use the tools that we have already given them over and over and over again that are not necessarily always received well or have been successful. So we're trying to build the student toolkit so that there are other things. The challenge is that Central operates with individuals that are over 18. So the requirements and the reporting and all of those things are significantly different. You can give them tools to use that are different than what we can use in the setting where we have minors. And the reporting requirements for staff are different, right? If you disclose certain information in the high school setting, you're required by law to report. So what we're doing currently is we're taking what we did in partnership with Central And we're working on, and we're taking our time because if we get it wrong, it could be really bad. And so we're trying to make sure that we're very intentional about how we translate that for work in the high school. But basically, it boils down to developing and working on empathy skills for students towards other people. As an example, figuring out ways to empower students to, if they see something that's not right, obviously, always said, see something, say something, report it, put it in an app, send it to a teacher, etc. What we've missed is the idea to reach out to another student and say, are you okay? Or how are you doing? What can I do to help you in this situation? And then really empowering students to say, okay, maybe I'm not going to be able to be the one to report it because I'm scared, but I can reach out to you and shake your hand and make sure, are you okay? And if there is something else I can do, let's walk down to the council together, or so it's building some of those other skills that we may have, in all honesty, overlooked for the sake of what's fastest and most efficient and to get it to a teacher administrator, but just basically care about other students in a different way. So we're working on that piece. The goal is to have a plan in place for the fall to unveil it to students at the high school. Student contact data. This is a popular question. Like, okay, what do you do with information that you get it when you're in the school? Say, you know, Matt says, oh, hey, I saw this kid doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Well, it gets reported, and then these are the number of student contacts that we've made so far as of the creation of this presentation, which was last week. 1,077 student contacts, and that means like you sit down in the administrator's office and you have a conversation about whatever the scenario is, behavior, harassment, bullying. You look like you took somebody's water bottle off the lunch table. We're talking all of the things. 1,077 individual student meetings around a wide range of behaviors, which translates into 600 phone calls called. And these are things that we log every single day. And later this year, when we have the high school presentation around silver data, I'm going to bring and show you the contact log with names redacted. So to see the things that are there, because it is an intense process to go through and report everything. This is not a title, this is setup. This is like what we do every day is recorded so that we have a record to keep track of it. Another one of the focuses post-COVID has been student opportunities and student engagement. One of the things that we really targeted this year is helping students feel like they're connected to either an activity, a group, a club, a program, an individual, some sort of a connection to the school that will help them be engaged. In the fall, we had our varsity athletes had one of the highest GPAs in the state. That's collected across all of the sports, a 3.7 GPA. 266 students participated in fall athletics. That's 27% of the student body, and the sports are listed there. In that same time, 324 students are registered for a club at the high school. In the wintertime, we have 111 athletes, 26 students in the play, 38 in the musical, and the largest homecoming dance the school has ever had was this fall. And not a lot of people can say a homecoming dance is an accurate measure of anything other than tickets sold. But it does say that the kids wanted to be there on their own time on a Saturday and have a good time with their peers. It was 600 kids, a lot. For anybody that's willing, we have more dances coming. Just contact.
That's a sweaty.
Let me know if it's interested in any other best. Go ahead. And then these are some of the CT involved. One of the things that
Well, I love all of this, especially the intentionality, because I think when we looked at that survey and students aren't always sure why they're doing what they're doing, and I think parents had also said that their students didn't always know why they were doing things. And so when that starts with the teachers, I think that'll help for that. My question is specifically about when you're looking at the essential standards, how do you find time for the teachers to look at the work together to, collaboratively assess and calibrate so that you've got that consistency from teacher A to teacher B to teacher C, that what I'm looking at looks like a 4 and Kevin thinks it's a 4 and Bo thinks it's a 4. But are you finding time for that, and how are you finding that time?
So yes and no. The challenge is
Board, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much, Bo. I don't think we have any questions, so.
I guess I'd ask the same question I asked Bo. Because I know when we're looking at these standards and we're bringing data, you have to have time for everyone to look at the actual student work too. Are you finding time for that? And how are you? Because that's got to be a huge challenge.
Because,
Board, any other questions?
I had one. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned tracking those standards back. So like you're talking about a high school performance and tracking a certain or pinpointing a standard back in sixth grade. So what kind of, I mean, how does that work? What kind of data sharing do you have with the high school where you can, okay.
All right, I think that's it. So thank you very much, Michelle. Oh, Mac?
Yeah, so I'm curious, like with the reteaching and what was it, enrichment? So if you were to do that, say in a sixth grade math class, and you happen to miss like a lesson or two at the end of the year, how would that affect, like if they were expected to know that in seventh grade, would that delay that and then into eighth grade all the way up through high school?
great question.
Okay, I think that's it.
All right.
Thank you very much, Michelle. All right, next item up is our student reports, Mac and Amari.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it brief because I know we have a little timeline. Obviously, the winter is not very busy, I guess. It was busy in the fall. It'll be more busy in the spring. Aside from sports and the music that has been happening recently, we had 4 students go to Denver, Colorado for FFA Livestock Judging Nationals. That was Olivia Mitchell, Avery Nemro, Jack Case, and Jack Siskey. They went to Colorado State University for practice classes in livestock valuation. And then they also judged 12 classes of beef, sheep, swine, goats. And then that afternoon, they gave 6 sets of moral reasons on their evaluations. And on Saturday, they went to the National Western Stock Show and observed livestock. And this was really cool for me to learn about because I'm not an FFA kid or a farming kid. And so I got to learn about everything that went into like how intense it is, like to say this cow is better than this cow. And you have to give 6 sets of reasons why the cows are different. So, and then obviously finals are this Thursday, Friday. And so everyone's working their tail off to ensure that they get the best grades possible. And other than that, any questions?
So for me, band has a solo and state, no, a solo and wind ensemble competition in Davis this Saturday, I think. Saturday. Saturday. So a lot of the kids in bands, not all of us, but most of the kids that have signed up are working their tail off to perform, and I'm super excited to hopefully be able to go see that. For TSA, which I'm a part of, we just submitted our first set of our projects for state, which will be in come springtime. So early March, I think, is when we have state. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then other than that, sports are doing well. The girls are winning per usual for basketball. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all that's going on in the winter time right now.
All right, thank you, Mac. Thank you, Amari. Good luck with your finals and to all the rest of the students trying to get ready for that. So, all right, that takes us from administration and into business. And first up is the enrollment report.
Yeah, so we'll pretty simple. But I also want to say, you know, you can go to a basketball game and see Amari directing the band as well. Yeah, so he's pretty awesome at that. So yeah, we'll always go check that out. Anyway, enrollment report, as you can see, and then just please, I'll just cover this one little highlight and then answer any questions if you have any. So our enrollment increased from December to January by a little over 7 students, which pushes us back slightly over our budgetary projection for the year. The little dip we had in December is really unexplained. We've bounced back. And of course, then this one in February will be very interesting because usually at the end of first semester, it doesn't stay the same. It either goes up or it goes down a little bit. So we'll see how the next enrollment report goes, but we are, as of this month, back on track. So anybody have any questions? All right.
All right. Takes us to financial update and Kim.
So tonight I'm going to be going over December 2023's financial report. And everything's pretty much right on target. The general fund for revenues are at 30.83% and expenditures are at 30.68%. The projected budget is around 33% at this time for 4 months of operations. And the fund balance is sitting at about 10.96%. Compared to December of 2022, the expenditures have increased by 218,000. And last year, if you remember, as I was reading the reports, they were much higher. But we did do budget cuts for the 23-24 school year, so that's why it's smaller this year. There was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County treasurers and the district trial balance. The capital project funds is showing 18.744% of revenues, and it has been received, and 3.69% of expenditures. The fund balance comes in at 2.21 million. And there was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County treasurers and the trial balance. And in that fund, we're not seeing a lot of expenditures out because most of our projects are done with our schools. We'll be closing out soon 2 schools, and we're looking at Lincoln. So you're not seeing as many expenditures. And for the tech levy that goes in there, we usually don't transfer that expenditures, as again, the expenditures actually are reported out of the general fund, but the revenue goes into capital projects, and then we transfer it out at the end of the year to cover those expenditures. Debt service fund, we are at 41.29% of revenue and 70.35% of expenditures. We did have a big principal and interest payment in December that came out. The principal payment was 2.7 million and 1.6 million in interest. And our next payment will be in June of 2024. And there was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County Treasurer and the trial balance. ASB fund has received 26.58% of revenues, and 14.5% of expenditures have been reported. The fund balance comes in at 501,000, and there was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County Treasurer and the district trial balance. And the private purpose fund, as you all know, that is not a budgeted fund, but the fund balance is at about 31,000. That's for our scholarships. And there was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County Treasurer and the trial balance. And the transportation vehicle fund, the revenue for this fund came in at 2.2%. We don't receive the revenue for that account or that fund usually until August. And then expenditures were at 32.4. We actually did buy 2 buses and have received those, and we're looking at buying a 3rd one this year. And there was no discrepancies between Kinshasa County Treasurer and the trial balance. I'd also like to mention as we go, before I end this report, I'd also like to mention that payroll and accounts payable division has been very busy this month, getting W-2s out to employees, and they have been sent out, and our 1099s out to vendors. The district has also implemented a new procedure this month where we are going paperless for our payroll steps. So we have contacted all employees and let them know that, and they can access their payroll stubs on the Skyward system, and they'll be able to do that. If they have troubles with that, we've actually sent out instructions for them to show them how. If they still do, they can come into the district office and we will show them how so they can get into the Skyward account. Or if they just really want a hard copy, they can come in and we will give them one. The HR department sent out return letters to certificated teachers asking them if they would like to return in the 24-25 school year. We just sent those out. We're getting those back now. That helps us a lot in our budgeting planning for 24-25, so we can see who is kind of planning to come back and who's retiring, and we'll be looking at those positions. The HR department has also been busy and just getting everybody on their, if they're wanting to change their medical plans, and that was back in November and December, and making sure that the system is updated for the premiums we take out for them and making sure all that's all correct. So they've been busy with that. The accounting divisions are continuing balancing and ensuring that good information is coming in and going out. We're also busy starting the 24-25 school budget. As you know, you received financial information for this and approved that in the consent agenda. But I just wanted to mention that, just so you guys know, that we paid 647 employees in December, and 17 payroll vendors and 291 accounts payable vendors in December. So just wanted to give you some statistics on what's going on in our department. We always hear from PG to 13, so I thought it would be good just to start giving you guys some information what we do over in the district office in HR and business. I would like to remind everyone that this report is presented with the information I have currently and is subject to change as we continue through the year. I'd also like to remind everyone that revenue sources are used in the current funds for authorized expenditures and can't usually be transferred to be used in different funds unless authorized within the adopted budget and within the accounting laws. Are there any questions?
Board, any questions? All right, thank you very much, Kim. All right, that takes us on to the next item under business, which is superintendent search update. And we have Mark Venn, who is joining us on Zoom, and he is going to give us kind of a mid-search update and stuff like that. So Mark, if you'd, oh, there he is.
Can you hear me?
You'd like to go ahead and.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, you can hear. Good, good. Well, you guys know how to have long meetings. I'm impressed. I'll try to make this as brief as I can. I'm sorry that, but we have some things we need to cover tonight, and I want to be the second person to congratulate you today on the Board Appreciation Month. Your work for schools and particularly for students and staff is complimentary and extraordinary. Thanks for all you do for our kids, particularly. So I gave you, Mike and Lexi, I think I gave you 2 pieces of information I want to cover tonight. I'll try to be brief, but please ask questions if you have them. I know a lot of you on the board I haven't met personally, but I've talked to on the phone. So I'm open for questions as we go through this. The first part I want to go over tonight in our agenda is our mid-search report. And it really isn't a mid-search report. We've gone past the mid-search part of our search for a new superintendent in the Ellensburg School District. And I just want to go through some of those numbers because I do know we have people online in the audience that may not have this in front of them. First of all, we know that the position closes a week from Monday, February 5th. And it's coming up on us pretty quick. And so we've got some work to do and we've got to move forward until February 5th. The online survey, I'll talk a little bit about that later, but we'll close that around the 29th or the 30th of this month. And we'll get a report to you probably within the next day or two of the online survey. As of last week, we had 113 responses. Talked to Lexi about getting it out more and maybe getting more responses from your community and from your teachers and from your students to give you a good perspective on what you are, your people think you should be looking for in a new superintendent. So let's go into the data here. I want to kind of tell you that a lot of applications, superintendent candidates are like middle school students. And I know you just heard a middle school report, but middle school students have a tendency to turn in their assignments late. Can you hear me? You hear me? Okay. And so do candidates. They turn in their applications late. And so I expect this number to increase. In fact, since I gave you the report, we now have 5 completed applications for your superintendent job. One from Iowa, one from Africa, international school in Africa, one from South Dakota, one from Washington, and one from Oregon. And we expect, I would guess, between probably around 15 applications. We just completed a Granite Falls search. We had 22 applications for Granite Falls, and we're completing that this coming week. We sent out 82 applications to prospective candidates. Out of those 82, 21 are current superintendents or interim superintendents in our state. From out of state, we sent them to 11, and you can see where they're from Iowa, Montana, all the way to Idaho, different states. Former superintendents and assistant superintendents, we sent out 4. Current Washington assistant superintendents and directors, which is oftentimes a large number, 24. Out-of-state assistant superintendents and directors, 12. And you can see the states they're from there: California, Florida, Utah, Indiana, District of Columbia and Maryland and Maine. 7 principals received applications. And out of those 82, we have 21 that are female that received applications. We have 61 that are male. We have 23 that have their doctorate degree. And we have 12 that we can identify as minority. So it's a good mix. Realistically, like I said before, we probably expect around 15 applications. The idea on the applications for you, board, is that after the survey closes and I get the survey report to you, I'll start sending Lexi the applications. And what Lexi will do is put them into a board. These are confidential. We'll put them into a board lockbox that you will only have access to. And you'll have a chance to read those before we meet and do our screening on the 7th. So I would suggest when you look at applications that you look at a couple areas very strongly. Number one is the writing portion. Each of the candidate needs to write to the prompts you have produced in your brochure. And that's really important. And the second thing is their letter of introduction. I think you can tell a lot by the letter of introduction for the candidates, whether they have a knowledge of the district and whether they are really serious about applying for the Ellensburg School District. So that's a update on where we're at right now. We're pretty optimistic, and we think you're going to have a real good pool. And like I said earlier on, our job's to make your job harder. And so I think you're going to have a strong pool of applicants to choose from. So let's go through our agenda here quickly. We talked about the job closing on the 5th. The survey responses was 113 last week. I was hoping we'd get around 200. We just did Granite Falls, a little smaller district than you, and we had over 300. So I'm hoping we'll get more responses from you on the survey. The screening meeting, that'll be an executive session. That'll be me with all 5 of you. That'll be on the 7th of February. My request is the sooner we can do that, the better in the day. So I know you started today at 5:30, but Mike, maybe you could find out a time that we could get together. I can pretty much come from noon on. I know Kathy teaches, but if we can get together earlier, it's probably going to take at least a couple hours to do the screening. And the idea behind the screening is that we're going to I'll bring you a compilation on each of the candidates of the vetting we have done. And then what we'll do is confer and come to an agreement and come to what we call a consensus on who we want to move forward as the 5 or 6 semifinalists from that group. So hopefully you'll have a chance to read those applications prior. If you don't, we can go through some of those as we go on that day, but count on at least a couple hours for us to be together. If we do meet at, say, at 5 o'clock, maybe we could have dinner together or something like that. So, but it would be just me working with you and the board. And then once we make our decision, I will contact those people and set up interview times for them on the 10th of March, which is when we do the preliminary interviews. And remember, we're going to do those in executive session with a committee from the community, from the students, from the staff, from your area, that it will be put together. I think there's about 15 people that will be there. Lexi will, and I think Jen and maybe Leslie will be helping out too with that to help me manage that thing. We asked each candidate to come in 30 minutes early. And in that time, I meet with them. I go through the contract, so we'll need the contract finished by then. I go through the what's going to be if they're the schedule, what it looks like if they're one of the 3 finalists, and then I also give them the questions to look at to prepare prior to them coming in. And I've given you some sample questions. I hope you can come to some agreement on what you want to ask. It's usually 12 to 13 questions. It's a 50-minute interview, and it's just with you and the observation panel. So once we finish the preliminary interviews, which will probably end up probably around 2 or 3 in the afternoon, we'll go continue our executive session with just the board and me. And we'll come up through a consensus. We'll come up with a plan to invite 3 people to come into the district the next week, starting on Monday. So on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, for a full day, each candidate will spend a full day in the district. And I know Lexi's putting together that schedule right now and working with Mike on that. And each day they come in. Your responsibility as a board member is hopefully we can have a board member there in the morning when they come for the first thing to greet them and congratulate them on making it to being a finalist. The other obligation you have, hopefully you can be there around 5 o'clock when we have dinner with the candidate and usually their spouse. And then at 6 o'clock, there's a community meeting with the candidate that we hope you can attend. And then at 7 o'clock, there's your final interview and executive session with the candidate. It's pretty much wide open what you can ask the candidates in executive session. Usually it takes about 45 minutes to an hour. We do that for 3 days. And then on the Wednesday night, we'll come to a consensus. We'll come to an agreement on who you want to bring in as your next permanent superintendent. And that will be a board, and we want to get a general consensus. We want to get a unanimous vote the next morning when we come in public meeting to roll call vote and announce our new superintendent for the Ellensburg School District on the 15th of February. So the finalists will all be here, and they'll be, it's a full day. They'll be from 7:30 in the morning till probably 8 o'clock at night. It's a long day, and it is a testing day, but as Troy can probably attest in his experience now as a superintendent, that's a pretty normal day. So you'll be able to see them. You'll be able to see them in the morning when they're bright and shiny, in the afternoon after they've been through a full day of meeting with groups. So each group they meet with, and as well as the observation panel, will have a chance to give feedback to you. And we're going to use a QR code, and we're going to ask basically 3 questions as they log on to the QR code for each candidate. What do you like about the candidate? What are your concerns about the candidate? And is there anything you'd like the board to consider about the candidate? Anything else you'd like them to consider? So that will kind of wrap it up for what we're doing. I mean, our next time together face to face will be the 7th coming up. Some of the logistics that you need to be aware of, and I say this because I can tell you now that in the Granite Falls search, and you will have an opportunity to look, we have a candidate coming from Indiana. And when they come from Indiana or out of state or from a long ways away, even our own state, that first meeting, that first interview is on their dime. But if you want them to come back to be a finalist, we ask the district to help pay for their transportation and their housing when they come back for their final interview. So just be aware of that. That may be something that could come up. There's some very strong out-of-state candidates that have been applying at other jobs, and quite a number that we've sent applications to. The other thing you need to talk about as a board is one of your expectations would be that the new superintendent live in the district. And normally what we ask boards to do is to consider a moving expense reimbursement for the superintendent usually around $10,000, which doesn't cover it all, but to help them cover for moving expenses as they move into the Ellensburg School District, which I assume you'd want them to have either in or very close to the district if they're moving in. So the thing that you need to work on before we get together and do our screening, we need to have that contract done. Hopefully your attorney's taking a look at it. We talked, Mike, we talked about the amount, and we're totally okay. And I've shared that with a number of candidates as well. So anything you need to ask or want to ask before we get together on the 7th, and you'll have the applications coming your way here pretty soon.
Mark, I have a couple of questions. This is Cindy
Sure.
Coe. So it seems like you sent us a draft of the preliminary interview questions, and I sent some just thoughts about those to Mike earlier. Are we supposed to have a meeting as a board to finalize those preliminary interview questions? Is that what's typically done?
Yes, that's what's typical. Well, you don't have a formal meeting. What Mike will do is facilitate. He'll put those suggestions in and run it by the rest of the board. And if they're okay with it, we go with it. But you need to come to a consensus on what you want to have. So it's, I don't think it's a formal meeting that you need to have, but it would be Mike facilitating that with the rest of the board members.
Okay. And then second question, just on the kind of interview question theme. So there are going to be final interviews that you said would happen on the 12th, the 13th, the 14th. And those last about 45 minutes. Is there a set of questions that will be standard for those? And should we develop those, or is that more conversational?
More conversational. The dinner is very informal with the spouse, and it's kind of a preliminary interview. And then what we do what we're asking, I think, and it makes a lot of sense. What we're seeing lately over the last few years is that we have at the community meeting, the community submits questions to the district, and then I will introduce the candidate and read the questions, and you'll observe from there. I think Lexi asked me today, is there any standard format when the candidates are in the district for a day for each group they meet with? It depends on the group. Sometimes groups will get together ahead of time and come up with their own questions that they want to ask. Other groups are just free flowing. Oftentimes the student groups want to have their own questions and they meet with their advisor ahead of time and do that. But it's pretty wide open. But usually groups will have the same questions for each candidate and see how each candidate answers that. How it works is I introduce the candidate for each group in the day they're there. Then the candidate gets up and says why they want, where they're from, why they're here, why they want to be the superintendent, and why they think they should be. And then the group asks questions. And then after it's over, they get onto the QR code and they provide comments that go back eventually at the end of the day to you, and you'll get a chance to read those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just for each of those finalist days, you have at 7 o'clock final board interview in executive session, but we don't need to prepare questions for that final interview.
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's up to you. You can do that, but most boards don't. It's pretty free flowing. I mean, if you have finalists A, you may ask them different questions than you do finalist B, which is in executive session, you can do that.
Last logistical question. So the selection announcement on February 15th, you said that there was a meeting in the morning that day that
Yeah,
will actually vote. Is that scheduled already?
I don't know. I hope it.
Okay, I don't think we've scheduled that yet.
It's
you.
not scheduled, but I think that was a
That's an open,
trying to
Mike,
remember,
that's an
but we
open
can
public
get it
meeting.
scheduled, so.
Yeah, it's usually early in the morning, like 8 o'clock. It's an open public meeting, and what happens is the board has come to a consensus the night before. We get together in executive session one more time right before that meeting starts, just to make sure nobody's having buyer's remorse. And then we come out and we have a script that you read from, and we'll read from that script. And then we do what's called a roll call vote. Have you guys done that before?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what a roll call vote is, and I don't know who leads that, Lexi or Leslie or one of your district office people would lead that, and then each of you would say yay or nay, and then you'd have your new superintendent.
Mark, I have two questions. For the preliminary interview on the 10th, it says exec session with an observation group. Is that up to us to put together and invite that observer? What's happening with that?
Well, that's, go ahead, Mike, go ahead.
Lexi's working on
Inviting people?
yes, so it'll be a mix of stakeholders, so certified, classified.
Has that
community.
already been sent out? Did I just miss all of that?
No, Lexi she was trying to send out, it's not a survey, but was it a survey? She was getting that ready to send out to the public
Oh,
to
okay.
apply to be on that observation committee. So.
Okay. And then I guess I have a huge concern, and maybe this is us dropping the ball with those, with the online survey, but we have nothing from the Spanish. We have 0, right? We have 113 English and,
Yeah, as of last week, Kathy, we have 0. Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
And that's, I have to tell you, when we did SELA, we had 0 there too. It's really difficult to get the involvement of the Spanish speaking community. It's not abnormal. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be different, but it's not abnormal. I also want to, your question on the observation committee, we will need to have them sign a non-disclosure agreement that they won't disclose the names of the people in the interviews, because the candidates are going there under the assumption and knowledge that their names will not be made public until the final 3 are named. So, so we'll have according, I think Mike or Lexi told me this, you've done that before. So, that's not.
Okay, well, thank you for answering that question, but I guess I would say that if you didn't get any feedback from the Hispanic speaking population and, stakeholders in SELA, or if this is happening a lot, then maybe need to change the way that we're doing business, because I find that unacceptable.
Yeah, well, it's not abnormal to have that happen, is what I'm saying, not that you shouldn't
Or
do it.
it might, if it's not normal, then we're not doing it right. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I want to make that clear. I'm disappointed something happened in that process that we have no feedback at all from those constituents.
Yeah.
Building off what Kathy is saying, I would like district staff to weigh in, and Mike, president, to weigh in of, we have another week before this closes, I think, in looking at this calendar. Can we reach out to our community groups? We've got Apoyo that we've got close connections with. Can we reach out to CWU? Can we send stuff to the county commissioners with a personal invitation from the board chair to forward the survey on? But can we have something, district staff, it's you and Mike that we have to ask to do this. But can we have a plan in the next 2 days of community groups that we're going to send the survey out to specifically, and then asking them to pass that on to their people if possible? I know KCH, and I probably didn't get that acronym right. I constantly get that in my email. Please send this on to your people. But in the next week, can we put a KPI or a goal that we're going to take a step? We're not going to hope, but there's going to be a plan to reach out with this.
I would also just add to that the middle school groups that Michelle Bibich was just talking about, that might be a way to outreach to families, at least at the middle school, because it seems like there's some kind of rapport there.
And one thing I'd offer, I mean, we just offered the surveys, but I would offer that maybe if you're sounds like you're very committed to trying to get more participation, which we think is great. Maybe move the closing date back a couple days from what we originally scheduled to maybe close on the Wednesday prior to when we go into executive session for the screening. So that's just a suggestion. We can do that. Okay, are there any other questions?
I don't think so at this time, Mark. So I will try to figure out with Lexi how to do the community group thing. I know that when I ran into her on Thursday, they were in the process of figuring out how to send out another blast to families and students and things and staff to fill out the survey. So I'm sure there's a way we can figure out how to get it to the community groups, I guess, better. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's on our website too. So
I think that's what we're like trying to figure out, out staff and parents and everybody that's in the school. That's easy. We do Parent Square, we send it out, right? And so it's been really kind of like, okay, how are we going to send it out to community? We can put it on the website. We're going to do that, but how do you send a message out that there's a survey out there in such a short amount of time to do that. And so I'm just writing her an email now.
Right, and fully recognizing that it is difficult, but hopefully that we already have established channels, and so that we can get that out, and then we can also ask those channels to spread it out. Because I know we've worked with, I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head either, but
Yeah, maybe we can do it on our Facebook page and be able to just announce that we have a survey to go to our website to be able to do that. We could do an announcement there.
and is there concerns also about is there concerns, I'm not thinking about personal email from the board chair? Because the chair speaks for the board to just our county commissioners, our city leaders, you could just do a nice big BCC list in case anyone replies all.
Yeah, but no, we'll
Just
definitely.
at that, in the next
No.
2 days, we could probably get something, and then at least we can report that out, because I appreciate the difficulty of it. I appreciate that, yes, people aren't, and the timing. But instead of having a hope, let's have a plan.
No, we can definitely work on that and see what we can do.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear you say that because I think you can do a lot better in getting responses to your survey. And it's okay to postpone shutting it down maybe by a couple days, and you can still have the report prior to when we get together for screening. So good, very good.
Just to reiterate Kathy and Tasha's points, that we're interested in more community feedback, but especially, like the full range of people, including Spanish-speaking families.
Yeah, good point. Good. That's great to hear. So that being said, I think we covered pretty much everything. We'll have an agenda for the 7th as well, but our main focus will be to screen the candidates down to the semifinalists to move them forward to the semifinalists on the 10th when we do that on the 10th. That's on that Saturday. So that's a full day for you, school board, on that day. So, okay.
Board, any other questions or anything? Okay. All right. I don't think we have any other questions at this time, Mark. So thank you for hanging in there and waiting for your time tonight. We appreciate it. And I will be in touch, I guess. So thank you.
Thanks for the help from the people from your district office too. They've been great to work with. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thanks, Mark. Bye. All right, that takes us to board reports. Tasha, do you have a legislative report?
I do, but I think we also have a time commitment. Just getting a time check. Is that okay? Okay, so I'll go fast. So this is also going to be linked in our packet. I apologize. I forgot to send it this morning, so the delay is my fault. So very quickly, this legislative session, right? It's fast and going. It's our short part. They call it the short cycle. So usually, takes about 60 days. Currently, there are a lot of education bills under consideration, 65 or more. Watching specifically, and they're linked in there, so you can also log in and see the Senate bill and the House bill and sort of where they're at. But really lifting that special education cap, you'll remember that work going strong from last year. The next one's a big one that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to. OSPI is talking a lot about, though, increasing funding to cover the cost of paraeducators to meet Initiative 1351. Those are important for everyone to be aware of what that funding implications would be, and those are in public this week. You could testify this week. The other one that I think is exciting, and if the student board reps were here, increasing student access to free meals served at public schools, that's back up for discussion. And if student board reps had asked if they could weigh in virtually on these, and anyone can sign up or send an email also. I'm going fast. So also thanks to Evergreen's Rob Perkins, he put out a very cool way to see the data for when we talk about special education funding. And so I linked it in there. It came from him. He's a board member. And so just using last year's numbers, we experience about a $539.2 million shortfall for special education. And so you can go in there and see our district. And so our district, as everyone has reported out to us, the staff has, is approximately $600,000 shortfall of last year. And so when we're talking about and advocating for lifting that cap, that is the reason why the shortfall that we cover with levy is approximately 600,000. I was waiting for Kim to like throw something at me and be like, you're wrong. And so speaking to our legislators about that and always saying that safety net is not covering it, this does have an impact on our levy, and we really do need to fix this. State Board of Education on December 12th, they announced the second cohort of the schools for the Mastery-Based Learning Collaborative. There's 40 schools in total so far. When schools are selected for that, they receive professional learning and they get to participate in a statewide community to work on the Mastery-Based Learning. State and federal funding for the 2-year budget cycle, we're in the second year of it, is $9.3 million. So the State Board of Education is working with those 40 districts to distribute that amount of money to deepen mastery-based learning. January 11th, there was a special meeting, which I'm not sure why there was a special meeting to reconsider, and it passed on January 11th. They are waiving the graduation requirements for this year's graduating class for ELA and math, but the first step was them approving this, and now it goes to public comment in April. And I was interested, I just wanted to know more about why that was coming to them and which districts are talking to them about it, because they have all sorts of warnings out there of like, if we don't get this passed before April, it will still stand, so help your graduates. But they're moving speedy on this one. And so I was just surprised. OSPI, Superintendent Reichtel has delivered the annual update. This was around October 10th. You can see that recording that he made. He brought up some interesting things. NAEP, last year's NAEP data placed Washington's 8th graders in the top 15 states in the country for math and reading. That's interesting, especially when you can go in and sort of slightly triangulate what our 8th grade data is. OSPI is working with Representative Alicia Rule and the Association of Education Service Districts on House Bill 2280 that would maintain and expand service for mental and behavioral health. So it's exciting to see that coalition coming out, because yes, they did expand funding for it, but it's very slowly over 3 years. So we still need to see the state fully fund mental and behavioral health. And then there's a graphic that we should start sharing more with people, because I think that we're hearing all the time in the news all the time, inflation, inflation, inflation. I don't know if that's just my radio that's talking about all the time when I'm driving. But school funding is not keeping up with inflation. And so as dollar amounts come out and we hear McCleary and we hear prototypical, this could be a graph to refer back to of just, even with just inflation, we're still getting behind on our spending. And as a heads up, Jen already gave us this, but in the next year, OSPI will start conducting the learning standards review. We heard a lot about standards tonight. It's work that they do. This isn't a surprise that they're doing this, and it's something that states often go through. So that was my very fast ledge report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tasha. Board, any discussion or questions for Tasha? Okay. Thank you. I do not have a board chair report tonight, so Leslie, that will take us, before we move to public comment, about how much time do when are we supposed to meet? Okay. Okay, so public comment. Leslie, if you could get us set up for public comment, please. The board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during the public comment period, and the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement of any speaker's remarks. As my capacity as board president, I may terminate an individual's remarks when the allotted time has passed, or if any speaker makes uncivil comments, including obscene comments, comments that are defamatory towards another person, or commentary that is an unwarranted invasion of privacy. I'd ask that you respect staff members' privacy and consider putting any concerns you have in writing if they pertain to an individual or a personal matter. The board can then review and forward those to an appropriate administrator. Leslie, are we ready for public comment? Individuals in person wishing to be heard by the board need to be signed up to speak, and those on Zoom need to add their names to the document in the Zoom chat box. If you are unable to do this, individuals may also be recognized within Zoom by using the icon or emoji to show you are raising your hand for public comment. Once the board chair calls or Leslie calls on an individual, they will identify themselves by stating their name and address for the record. Individuals will proceed to make comments within a 3-minute time limit. If individuals want a response from the board, this may be possible by submitting this request in writing or email to board@esd401.org. And Leslie will begin with anybody in person.
Good evening, Kevin Dwight, 402 South Courts Mountain Drive here in Ellensburg, Washington. As you know, I wear many hats in our community. I teach high school here, high school science. Some of you that know me, I think the folks online also know what I do and who I am. But at the same time, you're going to hear me speak from a number of those different hats that I wear tonight. First off, just real quick, we do have some new leadership from the association, the Teachers Union. We have 2 elementary staff members from Mount Stewart Elementary, Jamie Herder and Michelle Beeman have stepped up and are leading the union and doing a wonderful job communicating and help answering questions and, just help staff work through things that they might have concerns or questions about from the kind of the labor management piece or questions just working professionally. So welcome to them. And they wanted me to share their email if you had any questions, and I'm certainly happy to do that after the meeting tonight. In addition to that, I just wanted to let you know that we were really excited to hear at the last board meeting that you will be making a plan for instituting getting back into schools, getting board members back in, making those connections with staff in the buildings and, seeing what's going on in the buildings. Just really excited to hear about that and looking forward to seeing that plan executed. So thank you for that. In addition to that, I will also be sitting on the bargaining team coming up. You'll be bargaining with the union coming up here hopefully in the spring. We'd like to request if we've done it in the past, we started early in April 2 years ago. And if we could do that again, that'd be awesome. That was respectful to everybody's time. Coming to the table ready to go. And I can share with you that it wasn't a particularly positive experience during the last bargain. And I really do look forward to a different experience. And hopefully we can move forward together and really get this contract wrapped up before summer and get those staff members back to work and ready to go and educate children come September. Beyond that, the last thing I wanted to share with you, I just got a couple of, I got to tell you, I'm really proud of my administrator. Mr. Snow came up here and gave you a great report on teaching and learning today. And I do feel very strong that Mr. Snow is doing a wonderful job of finding a balance among everything that he's being asked to do. And I'm really proud to work for him. He does what he does with passion and energy, and it's really inspiring. And so I really do enjoy working for him. But I also wanted to celebrate my teacher's assistant in the last 30 seconds here, because I have a teacher's assistant this year. He's a senior, Cameron Nell. Not an idea how this was going to play out in my classroom, but this young man came in, challenged me to learn some new technologies. And we are right now running a 3D printer in our preparatory room almost daily. It's running 12 to 14 hours a day. And we are running everything from tooling to equipment. We're running, it's really cool what he's taught me and what we can do with the equipment that he has taught me to use that we already owned. So kudos to him. And it's just, we have such a tremendous youth in this community are amazing. They never cease to surprise me or impress me. So thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Kevin.
There's so many things to say.
Hello, I'm Carly Clark, 302 West Bowers Road. I've been a staff member at Morgan since 2009. I'm also a parent of an 8th grader at Morgan. That's why I rolled my eyes earlier when Michelle was talking about 8th graders. I happen to be the president of the Morgan Parent Group also. Kevin was talking about many hats. Oops. I'm also a member of the EEA bargaining committee, so I'll be working with Kevin. And I'm also the secretary of the EEA. And so I'm kind of coming to you today as the secretary of the EEA. I gathered a few celebrations from around the district that I wanted to share with the board. I had to write them down or else this time it would just, I would be talking forever. Okay. 1, the Professional Development Fund Committee has opened up for another round of applications for certificated professional development. I'm super excited about that. Pearl Rossi from Ida Nason, myself from Morgan, and Michelle Bibbich are going to be reviewing applications, and we've already got several. So we're really excited to have several staff members have the opportunity to maybe go to some trainings and stuff and get professional development, more opportunities to learn and grow and serve our students. Number two, lots of clubs at Morgan Middle School. We've got so many great opportunities for student enrichment, chess club, art, science, gamers club, and even a partnership between Ellensburg High School and Morgan, Tiffany Price coming down and doing Girls Who Code at Morgan, which is not only for girls, all genders and all gender identities are welcome as long as you support girls in coding. My son is involved and he enjoys it. Number three, at the elementary level, there have been a lot of collaborative committee work going on around proficiency scales. I'm sorry, I'm getting nervous. Scope and sequence and pacing and student growth, and the staff members are reporting that they're feeling really good about all of that work. Number four, Mount Stewart Elementary has a new dean of students, Matthew Piper, and the staff is really happy to welcome him to the team. Number five, Morgan's woodworking teacher, Josh Humphrey, has a really great relationship with Gallery One, and his woodworking class was recently able to go down and build and install a putt-putt golf, mini golf course down there. So it's pretty cool. If you're able to go down, there's a putt-putt golf, Morgan installed thing. Number six, the Native American Language and Culture Program, which is coordinated by Sia Aronica from Morgan Middle School and Janine Buffy from Morgan Middle School, is giving Native American students and their families lots of opportunities for making traditional crafts like baskets with modern and found materials. That's going on, super cool. Number seven, there are so many fun and creative PBIS incentives that staff members are offering to kids all across the district. At Morgan, we just did Pie a Teacher in the Face, which was so cool. Cocoa cookies and cartoons, classroom stores, and you can even cash in your bucks to perform at an assembly. And I do have time for the last one. The winner of the Morgan Chili Cook-Off was me. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Carly.
I did. I won. It was last week.
Give it a second to see if they can get signed back in, and if not.
Form vote, a Google form vote instead of that. Yeah. No.
All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment then. Thank you to Kevin and Carly who spoke tonight. New business. All right, that takes us into meeting closing. First of all, we do have an executive session tonight, board. We will have an executive session for the purpose of discussing with legal counsel matters relating to enforcement actions or to discuss with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation if public discussion might result in adverse legal or financial consequence. It is expected to last about 25 minutes. So it is 7:57. So I would say, Leslie, we will be back at 8:25. And we're just closing the meeting, so you guys don't need to hang out for us for that whole time. So board, yeah. So Leslie, we will be returned at 8:25.
Board, thank you for all your hard work. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Ribbons was not up, but I wanted to say, like, I remember when always in my sixth grade class, and here I am gonna be 40 and obese, like, my mortality is staring me down. It needs to be 20.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, okay, you try that.
Year and a quarter.
Oh my gosh. I get it. I get it. You pull that. Well, maybe your purpose might just.
Oh, that made my night. That was awesome. Oh. Wow. Every once in a while we get that, right?
Okay, I had to eat because I had to talk to a wall.
Okay, next up is board calendar. Board, do you have any discussion on board calendar other than you have any questions about the that's week for the soup search? So
I guess the only question, sorry, I guess the only question I have is when the school visits are going to be arranged.
That is worked out the schedule with some of the weather stuff we had. I didn't have a chance to kind of get everybody together to like, because then what I want to do is like, all right, what I want from the schools to say, all right, do you have any windows you like? And then I'll go to each one of you and say, what are your windows? And so we'll be putting that together here this week. I just didn't, or by the end of next week, we'll have it all together. I just haven't just missed talking to a couple of people due to the weather to get kind of that window straightened out. But we'll have it and we'll put it, and then I'm sure we'll have to go back and forth on it a little bit via email.
anything else? All right, clarification and next steps. Leslie has documents for us to sign. That takes us to adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
I second.
Cindy has moved that we adjourn and Madeline has seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you.